Astrology. This is the birth chart for Dave Chappelle. Just a reminder, I do astrology readings, and I am available right now, and they're very affordable. You can go to my website, joesastrology.com, for more information. And Dave Chappelle is a Virgo rising, Sun in Virgo, and Moon in Cancer. And the rising here is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is in the 11th house in the sign of Leo. And Dave Chappelle is known as being a comedian. We see comedy being associated with Leo and Sagittarius, and with that ruler of his chart being in Leo. And it's also in the 11th house. And this is a guy who thinks differently, acts differently. He may not even show all of his beliefs or the way he thinks all the time, but if you really get to know his work, you can see that he's definitely a guy who thinks different with that Mercury in the 11th. But I definitely want to highlight the fact that the ruler of his chart is in Leo, is in the sign of Leo, and it's also the planet of communication. So we think of being a comedian, you have to be someone who can communicate your jokes, communicate your story in front of a lot of people. And you can compare this if you haven't seen the mini reading I did on Cat Williams. You can compare this chart to Cat Williams because I just want to state, as I'm going to go through this, I'll show you, because Cat Williams has a lot of Virgo and Leo as well, and the difference that I see between the two, where, as I mentioned with Cat Williams, there was a lot of Virgo themes in the sense of redeeming himself, really improving himself, changing, transforming, etc. But as I mentioned, we often see that with Leo Virgo, the step into the world, very Leo-like, and then the planets in Virgo asking the person to reflect on maybe some of the things that they've done or said that maybe they regret. And with Dave Chappelle, I don't see that as much, even though he does have the Virgo. And we see here's that sun that I'm talking about here in Virgo. It's in the 12th house, and it's on the cusp. You could also say it's in the 11th. So I'll leave that there as it is, and let's check out the moon. He has a moon Saturn in the 10th. So when we see planets in the 10th, we can see that there is some kind of need to have status, to maybe have a career. And the thing about the moon in Cancer is that he, as I said before, I think I said this, that he really resonates with a lot of people. He had that with that moon in Cancer, people can see that that he cares, and that's a good thing to have if you're a presenter, if you're a comedian, or if you're just anyone in the public. When they can see that you care, that they will give you their attention. And we see the moon and Saturn there in Cancer in the 10th. Someone who's capable of work ethic, responsibility. I mean, to do what he did as a comedian, you have to have good work ethic. I'm sure it's not easy writing jokes, etc., and then going through the process of traveling and getting on stage. And the thing about Cancer is Jupiter, the planet that rules Sagittarius, and as I associate Sagittarius with, and just fire in general, with comedy, Jupiter is also exalted in Cancer. And we could see he has Jupiter in the 5th in Aquarius, going back to that idea that he has you could say has good fortune in that Leo house, the 5th house, in comedy, self-expression, having fun. Also, we can see more of that Aquarius and thinking differently. He really gets along with diverse groups of people, and that's another reason why you would see his success is that him being a black man born in DC, from DC, and yet There are all races and all different ethnicities love his comedy. And he's even able to make fun of race. If you ever seen his show, Chappelle Show, it's constantly making fun of race and getting away with it. So let's move on to the. You can also see here the midheaven. It's Gemini, the ruler of his midheaven, as well, being coming back to that Leo, Mercury and Leo, and being known as a comedian, a talker, Gemini there. Uh, I would say the idea of being a comedian too, being known as a comedian, uh, with that Gemini, he can kind of like jump around with different topics, give different opinions. He can also appear as if he's a kind of a trickster with some of the work that he's done. Back here to the first house, he's got Venus in the first, and you can see where he would do best to make money off of obviously the comedy there in the fifth, but with the added Venus in the first by promoting himself. And then as we can look at the again the ruler of the first in the 11th in Leo promoting the self as a comedian. We see Uranus is there with Venus. We see he's had success in television, so we can equate Uranus with the internet, and television, and even that Jupiter in Aquarius. His biggest success has to be that Chappelle show, and it wasn't without its own controversy when it came to money, which I'm not going to tell the story. If you don't know it, you can look it up. So we see that problematic planet conjunct the planet of money, both problematic planets, the Pluto and Uranus, but the Chappelle show still did put him on the map and really set off his career. He has acting experience. We see here with the sun potentially in the 12th there on the cusp. He's done several movies. I think one of his first movies was called Half Baked, but he's also done some more serious movies that were romantic comedies such as You've Got Mail. We see Neptune here in the third house, the house of the mind. Very much acting and performing on the mind for this guy. He has Neptune in a sextile to Venus, which is a great aspect. More of that good-natured, more good-natured aspects that you see in this chart that really explain the popularity that he's had and the way he's able to get away with the comedy that he performs, because people do see that he means well. Some other people that might do that comedy, they might have different aspects in the chart, and they can, like, you might think if you're in a comedy, you would see people doing similar jokes and they're not getting away with it. The people aren't laughing. He's got a Jupiter Neptune sextile, very good aspect there as well for success. And just looking at Neptune in general, we see the Venus, the Jupiter, the Node, the Mars, the Saturn, the Moon there, and the Sun. Lots of aspects to Neptune. Pretty sure the guy smokes weed. Having that's more to me is very Neptunian. Having a great imagination. Very good for comedy. Lots of inconjuncts as well. I'm not going to get into what that means. You can look it up. But lots of quincunxes, inconjuncts. And if we're looking at the Virgo inconjunct, this can be very good for someone who's a performer, an excellent comedian as well, because he has the ability to analyze his jokes and analyze them so well that they have to be successful. And I don't really know, that might not be the case. Maybe he does. Maybe he just gets on stage and wings it. But looking at his show, Chappelle Show, I would think that would take a lot of planning, a lot of analyzation. we can see he's had some good. I'd say he's had some good fortune with friends as well, with that Jupiter in the Aquarius and the planets here in the 11th, the part of fortune in the 11th, the house of friends. If you watch Chappelle show, there's a lot of people that really helped him out with that show. That I believe made it funnier, funnier than it might not have been without them. And I'm sure there's plenty more to this chart. We can see the nodes, the south node in the 10th. And, I talk about the south node giving you a feeling of being frustrated or stuck. And this guy has had those experiences in his life for sure. As I mentioned, the Chappelle show wasn't all good. And, but with it in the 10th house, he's definitely going to be famous for something, or he's going to, have some success or some image in the world, whether it be like a manager or you know a father. He is a father, like something like that. And with the South Node there, I think that's not necessarily bad for a comedian because it gives you that edge where you would see more of that South Node energy. And also with the Mars, kind of gives it like a Mars quality, where Mars here is making a sextile to that South Node, and it's in the eighth house. So this opportunity of really being able to research and be a psychologist of humanity and use that in his favor, which as a comedian, which is really cool here looking at this chart, you can really do that. You can use dark themes and you can get away with saying things that you couldn't get away with if you were speaking, if you were, say, lecturing at a college. And you think of other comedians like George Carlin that really got away with saying a lot that if he wasn't a comedian, if he wasn't on a comedy stage, he probably wouldn't have got away with saying those things. We see Venus is if this Venus Pluto is actually squaring the nodes, and it really comes back to this moving into this 10th house, the ruler being the moon, and the moon is there, and the ruler of the north node, where he's headed in the fourth, there as well. What does that mean? Well, I'd say it's a good sign that this guy is really made an attempt to, if you think of the Virgo, he's really made an attempt to resolve that south node. And with all of the Virgo, that would give him the power to do that as well. Whereas if you think back to this idea of Cat Williams, I don't remember the chart that much, but you can go back and check it out. My impression is that someone like him is not really leaning into what he needs to in order to resolve whatever it is he needs to resolve from a soul level, whereas Dave Chappelle has. Not sure exactly what that means, so I'm not going to try to get into that in this chart, maybe in a future reading. And I hope you enjoy this mini reading of Dave Chappelle.